Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're trying something again very different. I've realized that many players seem to be struggling with hard mode when the beginning of hard mode is actually not so hard. My argument is that hard is easy. And we're going to start on the lakes map that we're currently playing with the Iron Teeth and a full Let's Play. So instead I decided to pick the other faction and, get everyone going, trying to explain myself or the way I approach any kind of map on hard difficulty level. So we've started. We see a bunch of water flowing. The first thing that you want to do is check out which direction the water is flowing. And in this case, it's relatively easy, even without having the game run, although I'm gonna set it to go. We see the water is actually flowing down this way, which makes us, or which gives us the idea that ultimately we need to put a little dam in somewhere over here. Now we could put in the dam right at the beginning, which would mean that we don't have a lot of water storage, so to speak, because ultimately there are two kinds of water storage. One is natural water storage, which means you just put in a dam and whatever gets stored behind it, that is your water resource during a drought. The other aspect is actually in the storage section where you can put in tanks. Now, tanks come in different sizes, but realistically in the beginning, all you can really afford is the small tank because you need more complex resources as you upgrade your storage. So that is something to keep in mind. The next thing, in the beginning, you need three things. One is water, the other one is wood, and the third one is food. So these are the basics on any map with any of the factions. That is something that you will need to do. Usually in the beginning there will be a blueberry patch close by, and this will be your initial food source. I might argue here that even before the first drought hits, you already move away from this blueberry patch, as you need to some time to actually grow the regular food that's part of the farm that you see in here. So with the current faction, we do have the efficient farmhouse, but it's no different with the Iron Teeth faction, although the farmhouse is obviously less efficient, because I guess it's not called efficient farmhouse. Anyways, so these three aspects we need to keep in mind. Now I see quite a few videos out there where it is argued that you should just chop every other tree as it naturally spawns new trees. I don't think that is necessary. You need a lot of resources in the beginning, so aggressive deforestation, while I don't approve of this in real life, is gonna save you on Timberborns or in Timberborns on hard mode. Usually have quite a few of the initial wood resources close by. Birch trees give you the least bang for your buck, whereas pine trees are pretty okay. The next thing that you want to do is figure out where your oak trees are, because oak trees are the creme de la creme when it comes to wood production in Timberborns. So we see there's some over here, and that means we want to get over there relatively quickly, because our wood supply in this area will not last very long. So having said that, because as I mentioned before, we do want to put in a dam so we have some natural water storage for the first drought, we probably want to put in the dam somewhere close to that secondary wood supply, so somewhere down here. And that is honestly all you really need to think about. So now when it comes to putting down your paths, I would recommend putting a little bit of a path layout in there. Like I mentioned before, in terms of dam, we probably want to build something over here. So it's okay to already put down the path all the way to the end. We also need a path that goes straight to the blueberry production area, which is right here. And now we have a decent amount of green space in the middle that we can use for our farmland. So when it comes to farms, you could place them on the corner of this. Let me just quickly put this in. Because we're on pause, I don't mind. The initial placement doesn't actually cost us anything. So if we place this here, we have the entire space here to plant. However, this little beaver needs to go from that entryway all the way down here, significantly increasing the distance they need to walk compared to putting a farm in over here. So now they walk out here and actually start planting much sooner compared to any kind of farm that is close to this end. So I'm going to remove this, and this is the more efficient layout for any kind of farm. So we've talked about most of the things that we really need to talk about, so let's plan actually the rest. Now I've put in an initial pathway over here, but one thing that I noticed right away is this area here is probably pretty good for putting down our water pumpers. So if we move the path one up, we have enough space to put 2 of our pumps right here, which will ultimately supply us with a decent amount of water. I've put this in here too, but I'm also going to pause this production because the very first thing that you want to put down is lumberjacks. And initially when I started out playing, I only put down 1 lumberjack and then was just waiting for the resources. Since this is your main resource for building anything else in the beginning, put down multiple of these. And especially on hard mode, 2 probably not going to be enough. So we are going to expand this over here to our secondary wood production area, just over this way. And we're going to put down another 2 of these lumberjacks, which means in total we have now 4 lumberjacks that will ultimately provide us with a decent amount of wood to keep us going, like I said in the beginning. All right, so I've spaced them out a little bit just to cover a little bit more of the area. This lumberjack here will cut down all the birch trees over there, and I honestly don't care about the birch trees. They can basically just be chopped down and open up this area for us to do something else afterwards. This could be a potential good space for us to put down a forestry industry, as there's a good amount of water left, or water over here, that can supply our trees with the water they need in order to grow. However, one thing to consider is we're going to put in a dam down here, and all of this water is going to basically go down this tiny waterfall, leaving this top part completely dry, which means our trees will not able to grow in the beginning during our first drought, and that will very likely cause us issues in the long run. So I am going to high prioritize these for now so I can stop pausing the game, because while it's quite important when you start out with to have a look around and get a lay of the land, it can actually be quite beneficial to pause the game and just figure out what's going on. There's actually no real need to pause after this. So they are going to build our foresters right now, and we're also going to put in a little bit of a wood storage. So there's the small pile. I don't think it is necessary to put this in, especially early on when it comes to collecting just a basic wood that you need for any building and every building. So we immediately go with the bigger pile. The next thing we're going to put in is our gatherer flag, very close to the berries, so they don't have to walk too far. And in this case, we're quite lucky because it's also very close to our district center, where most of the beavers seem to be hanging out in the beginning. So now almost all of our foresters are in our wood choppers, which is great, and they are starting to chew away on the tree. Don't fill up your tummy, right? There will be berries coming your way real soon. So the next thing is actually creating this gatherer flag. Once this is in, we will build the water pump, And then we really have everything that we need in order to provide our beavers initially with all they need. They have food, they have water, and they are producing wood to supply our little colony with what it needs to actually grow. Now we're still on the first day, and the end of the first day is coming near. What I like to do is increase the work hours by 4 hours. You could argue that you should increase it to 24 hours, but even that little bit of sleep will allow them to have enough time to eat and drink and ultimately be a little bit more efficient in the long run. So our workers in here, and I'm going to increase the number here to as many as possible, while setting it to the lowest priority, are now building our water pump. The reason why I set the builder in the builders or in the district center to the lowest priority is I want as many unemployed beavers as possible to be builders while still prioritizing everything else. We still need a lot of wood, we need food, we need water, so that is something they really need to focus on. Alright, so they are building our water pump. I am going to unpause the farmhouse, and while it has space for 3 workers in here, and for the iron teeth it's 2 workers, we are going to reduce it to 1, because it will take a while for this worker to plant the crops that will ultimately be harvested. So for now, and this is actually not that good an idea, for now we're going to start filling up the area around this farmhouse. And one easy way to improve the productivity is to do it layer by layer. So see how I go in the diagonal and then just add 1 layer in every direction? Now this will optimize the path, or approximately optimize the path that the beavers need to go in order to plant them. So technically, if you want to optimize it even further, you could equally space it out based on the entrance of the farmhouse. So you could draw circles, or circles in quotation marks like this, and then go over here, do the next one, and do the next one right here. And again, keep it equidistant to the entranceway of the farmhouse. So this will look a little bit asymmetric initially, but it will ultimately improve your efficiency. And just to basically prove a point, we're going to expand them like this. And then this part over here, we're removing, as it is less efficient than having the areas up here. So the beavers can walk diagonally. And it kind of looks like I went 1 too far in this direction. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and I actually did do it right, 5 squares distance from the entranceway. Here we have, so for them to go out from here, over here, they start from here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We also have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. See how the distance is always the same, which is technically not true for this side. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which means all of this definitely gone. All of this is gone. This is gone, and this is gone. And this looks super weird, I know. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But this is one way you could potentially optimize it to make sure your beavers plant in the most efficient way possible. Now, the second day has started. We do have our food gatherer. They have put 20 berries in there, so all of that is good. The next thing that we can do is actually put in a food storage warehouse. So for now, we're going to place it here. Actually, we're not going to place it here. We're gonna put a small warehouse right next to our berry gatherer because of the specific faction that we play. We don't actually need those berries. Once that farmhouse is in and starts planting and harvesting, our berry gatherer kind of loses its point. For the Iron Thief, it's different, as you need to mix berries and water to make new beavers, which obviously makes a lot of sense. So they are still building this, And one thing to keep in mind, as this gets built and some new beaver goes in there, we actually are down to one beaver as a builder. We do have 4 beaver babies, which means they will grow up and fill up our building capacity, but that will take a little while. And with that, you have built the most basic buildings, and now all that needs to go in is a dam. So this is quite a wide spread over there, but ultimately it's perfectly fine, right? The wide spread doesn't matter. We have still very likely a few more days before the first drought hits, which will allow us to build this up, and then we are good to go. We have food, we have water, and reliable supply, importantly, and we're still overproducing some of the wood that we need for additional buildings. One thing that you also need to keep in mind as these are chopping down the trees, once there are no trees in range to be chopped down anymore, you can just go ahead and pause these, and because the way we set up the builder hut, they will immediately become builders. Take the resources and start putting them in whatever area or whatever building you need to build. Now, one water pump will supply enough water for about 15 beavers in the beginning. So while they're less happy, they are less productive, so it will ultimately still work. So as they are supplying us with enough water to keep our beavers happy, we could consider putting down initial storage for water. That will be quite useful when it comes to a drought, especially in the second and third wave of the droughts, but it's not directly necessary before the first drought hits. So right now we have 4 builders, which is great, and they are already putting in the dam. So we have the first dam piece in. We're in day 3 of our game, which still gives us plenty of time to put this up before the drought hits. Keep in mind there hasn't been an announcement yet, and once the announcement comes for the drought, that's when you have 3 days. The next thing to consider, we do have 1 beaver in there, and that beaver is putting down our plants. He has started from here and then moved on to this way, and then technically, I don't know where you continued. Apparently you continued then here, then there, and so on and so on. So from that entrance areas, like I said, they are spreading out around like approximately radial. Now he's almost done, and the first plant has not grown fully, which means you have not really maximized the amount of crops that this beaver can plant before it's grown. And this is where you start to expand. I usually expand almost in this radial area, and like you see, because I didn't perfectly place it in the middle, it's not perfect in any sense, but this is how I would usually spread it out. I keep the path in the non-fertile land, which means I'm not wasting a lot of space over here, while it is wasting a little bit over there. Straight paths are also beneficial. So he keeps planting stuff, and once all of this is planted, I can pause him and free up another beaver, although we don't really need this at this point. Some of these trees here have grown back, so we're going to unpause one of the lumberjacks over here that will keep the entire area here sort of in bay or in check by chopping down the trees that grow up. And we're definitely deforesting this area because we're not waiting for any of these trees to spawn a new baby tree to move on. Now they're almost done with this dam, which is great news, because once we're done with this dam, we're also on the other side. And don't be afraid to chop down small baby trees if it helps you put down a path. So I could have put in a lumberjack here and waited until that lumberjack or that tree growed. So the lumberjack can cut it down, and we can, it's too much to think about. So we're going to assign this to chop be chopped down, as well as putting down 2 more lumberjacks. And those 2 lumberjacks will be the replacement of these 2 once they are put in. So I think here only 1 lumberjack will be enough to keep this entire area in check. Right now there are no more trees over there, so we can pause him. On the other hand, we now have 1 unemployed beaver. So what are we trying to do next? And the next thing that you really need to think about is science. You need science relatively early, because you either unlock your stairs, your levees, or your forester. Is that called a forester? It's called a forester. So while the lumberjacks chop it down, the forester will replenish your source of wood. And that is something, again, that you want to put in relatively early, as it takes a while for the trees to grow. So it helps to have your lumberjack in and start planting, or basically go mental when it comes to wood. So we are still finishing up the dam. Because the drought hasn't been announced yet, I am going to high prioritize the construction of the inventor, so our unemployed beaver actually gets something to do. And that might take a little while. They're still putting in or logs into here, and that's because this is also on the highest priority, so I'm going to put this on the 2nd highest priority. And while I haven't done this so far, it is actually quite useful to keep everything, if it's important, on the 2nd highest priority, so you can still change your mind and put 1 additional building on an even higher priority. Again, just something to keep in mind. Now they have finished the inventor. They are producing. We are seeing some of our beavers being thirsty. However, keep in mind, one of these will actually produce enough water to keep your beavers in good shape. Now, for whatever reason, they have finished building the small tank, so we're going to set this to water, which means this water pumper has now an area where you can just dump in the water. There's a bit of a balance that you need to consider between the distance of your water pumper to the small tank and wherever your beavers are living. So in this case, they are very close to the district center, which means this is better distance compared to it being right here, where this water pump has an easy time to dump it, but all your beavers have quite a long way to go in order to get this, or to get their drink on. So I've now paused the farmhouse because there's nothing more to plant. Right now, that farmer was just waiting for these carrots to grow to a maturity. So I did pause this one, reactivated this lumberjack because some of those trees grew up, and we still have 1 unemployed beaver, which means we can put in another inventor to be constructed. However, not before the dam is finished. So you've seen the drought has been announced and it's approaching. We have 2 more days, but we do want to finish this dam, and they've already put in all the wood. So now they just need to take a hammer to it, hammer it 2 or 3 times. Here we go. And the dam is in, and now we are safe from the first drought. We have our water pumper. We have a good amount of water left in this natural reservoir and this natural storage facility. And that will ultimately provide enough water for our beavers, definitely for the first drought. Now, with that, I'm basically explained all the basics for how to get started on any hard map. The next thing that you need to consider is, now that this is in, there will be a bad tide. So you need to figure out how to prevent that water source, that water storage that you've created, how to prevent it from being contaminated by a bad tide. Which means you need to go back to your water flow, see where it comes from. So this one comes from up here. All the water is basically flowing down there, and we're trying to prevent bad water going down this way. And we could put in a dam right here, but there's a big chance that this dam will overflow and all the bad water will contaminate all your water storage that you have down here, which is not great. So instead, for a map like this, we would want to block off the water flow over here with a dam and over here. And this is where a bit more experience comes into play, because there's a lot of water that comes down here. We have a water stream coming from this direction. We have a water stream coming down this direction, which means ultimately we have water flow from, let's actually quickly count. So we have 1, 2, 3 wide water flow and another 3 wide, 4 wide water flow going down here into a almost just a 3 wide area, 3 wide channel. So that means all of the water that comes down here is enough to put this on an equilibrium as it flows out here. But we have an additional water source incoming from this way, which means this is very likely going to overtip if I just put in a dam. So we need to put a 2-level store or 2-level block in here for any kind of bad water. Now, this is again a bit more advanced, and I want to say we'll talk about this next time, but let me know if you like these kind of tips and tricks on how to survive on a hard map, and I'm happy to explain these initial steps and how to get your beaver colony off to a good start and ultimately manage to play any map with any faction on hard difficulty level. Alright, thank you everyone for joining. Hope you liked it. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment for me. Thank you everyone, and hope to see you next time. Bye bye.